we're going to open our meeting to our special work session. I don't know what that was, if somebody came in or went out, but we're open for discussion. And I did call this meeting tonight. So I guess, unless you want to say something about this first, Dr. Watts, or?
No, this is your meeting.
Thank
you.
All right, I just want to be respectful.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
And we don't have to do a flag salute tonight, do we?
No.
Okay, just, Dan, I need to know.
We don't have to. No, okay. You can choose to, but we don't have to. No.
I'm going to ask even the stupidest question because I want to get it right. Okay, the reason I brought this to a headway is because obviously it was brought to my attention, and somewhere along the line, I didn't realize that we hadn't completed our annual board goals and that we needed to do that. And so I started looking into it, and I asked our former board president, and there you're all gone. Okay, can you still see me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you left me. I'm gone. Just a second. I'm sorry. I have lost. I can't see any of you or anything.
Yes, we can see you. I think
then
Karen was sharing the screen.
Yeah, she's sharing a screen.
Okay, just a moment. Sorry.
Can you see me?
Okay, I'm just going to keep talking. You can't see me or anything, but if you can hear me. Basically, I asked our former president of the board if she had any highlights about those questions about the 2018, well, wait a minute, was it 2017, 2018, and then 2019, 2020 board goals, and she sent on some information on that. And I think I sent out to most of the people that I thought that would be here tonight the information that Maya sent on. And if you're referring to that email that she sent to me, it's the second email down on October 2nd, and she's talking about the already existing goals that they had. And all of those, I don't know if you had a chance to look at them, all of them look pretty good, but I wanted to see what the board thought. And I thought if this was just simply we needed to go through a formal process, and in her email, they had stated at that meeting that they probably wanted to include the new board in the finalization of it. So I guess it's still in what we call draft form, that we could look at it tonight. And this is something we could easily, correct and get our policies on track by looking at it. And if we wanted to add anything to it or didn't think it was in alignment with what's happening, that we could easily do that. I thought it's something we could solve pretty easily and get done tonight. That's why I wanted to expedite it. Have you all had a chance to take a look at that, Michelle, Leah?
I have, but I was going to print it out and I forgot. So forgive me. But at this point, it's May, and it's to me, that's just, we can't go back in the past and it was missed. But I think it is important to look at next year's goals. And this process has been pretty scattershot, the best I can figure. I see that in 2017, in September, the board had goals that they voted on at a September meeting. Because I went 1 year back before that. But then in 2016, I don't find anything for the 16-17 year. And then I didn't have time to go back further. So, I mean, it's a policy that's been around since I printed it out since 2005. Right. So it just seems that it hasn't been followed with fidelity, maybe, or with an eye towards actually doing it. And it's important work. I think setting goals is always important to know what you're working on for the year. So it just seems to me that we might want to just review the goals that they had going in and see what new goals with the COVID-19 situation, we might even need to set a half year's worth of goals, that start in July and go, half the year, because we don't know what we're going to be facing as far as, whether we're in school or not and things like that.
Director Bowen, have you had a chance? Somehow, can you signify to me if you've read through those?
That was the email that you had sent about the information. Okay, let me go back and look at it.
Yeah, it has, if you go down it, it has goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, goal 4 was their rough draft form, as I understand it. And going through it, I mean, when I went through it, it looked pretty good to me so far. And I understand, Michelle, what you're saying about July. I think we could expand upon that. But I mean, do you want me to read through these and go through this and see if anybody has a question in case you don't have it in front of you?
Sure.
So this is what they had, the former board and our 2 current board directors were part of that.
Mhm.
And this was for 2019, 2020. So, I mean, we can talk about what's happened before. I think my goal is just to let's do what we're doing now and
Mhm.
get it right and try to go from there. I mean, that's all I can do at this point.
Right. And it's obviously something, I know the prior board had discussion a lot about calendars. It's obviously something we need to just get calendared in that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to, unless you have any other comments, Dr. Watts, that you want to add, because you were probably a part of this too.
No, I think you're following exactly what previous board has done as far as discussion. We talked briefly, and I think I'll just sunlight that conversation. Having a new board happens when you have at least one change, right? But what was my understanding, what was agreed upon is that the goals would remain until the newly appointed members of the board, and thus the new board, had an opportunity to review. Director Bettinger makes a great point, and a point that I also shared with you, and we agreed. In order for goals to be attainable and measurable, you do need to set them, yes, but you also need to give an ample and appropriate amount of time within which to do what you said you would do and determine how well or not so well we met those goals. I don't know that we had that much time, but it is good that we're getting on a firm ground and all on the same page on why goals and what goals might be able to look like in the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I'm going to formally apologize if I missed this and didn't get this on the calendar in January, but I've been on a learning curve.
No, understood.
I mean, I didn't realize that we had to, I mean, I've been to board meetings, I've watched videos, I've been at work sessions, but honestly, this went right over my head that this needed to be completed. It would have been really helpful, I think, in the future, and I'm going to write down a reference on this if I ever, decide to get this book of things that were helpful for me to learn from and grow from and know that had to be done. If I'm a checklist person, like used when I had kid, I had stickies all over my refrigerator, and I just take them off as I got things done because I had 3 kids going in every direction. So it would have been helpful just to say that we needed to address this in January or February, and maybe I heard it, but I didn't hear it.
So, but it does say, the policy does say that at the conclusion of each year, the superintendent will submit a report to the board that will reflect the degree to which the goals and objectives have been accomplished. So do you have those, Superintendent Watts, from previous years? Do you have those reports?
So I'm not sure exactly what reports we're discussing. I think I'd have to take a look. I can work with Karen in our previous board, but I appreciate the question.
It's on the policy 1810 that every year at the conclusion of each year, the superintendent. So do you recall doing any written reports in adherence to this policy?
I'd have to look back. There's quite a few reports that we process, but I appreciate that. I will make sure that Karen and I have a conversation on that to see exactly what that report should look like. It doesn't immediately come to mind, but doesn't mean that we did not conduct that report. But what's, I think, even more important for us today is how do we, I think you mentioned that as well. There's quite a few things that we know with COVID and with our transition. We may have missed some topics, right? That's the reality. And I think we've all said in very similar fashion, maybe in different ways, that we can't go back, but what we can do is move forward. And today is the day to do that. So I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to go through it. I'm going to go through these starting with goal 1. They have labeled this evaluation and metrics monitoring. And under that is numerical number 1, superintendent evaluation meetings done semi-annually twice a year. I mean, we'll do this in June, correct?
Correct.
And that is the second one, right?
Correct.
We have actually met that goal then, right? If we decide to keep that as a goal.
Yep.
Okay. So I don't have any problem with that. Do you, Director Bettinger? And Director Bowen, do you have any, hate to bother you here to get an answer out of you, you have a problem with that?
Not at all.
Did you say I don't?
I said I not at all. I don't have a problem.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understood you.
Sorry.
And Dr. Watts, just seeming we've actually met a goal. Do you have a problem with that one?
No, I do not. No.
And I think we have it on our calendar, that tentative calendar we had a work session on our tentative calendar for tonight. And I think that on the tentative calendar that we got on February 1st, the evaluation, the final evaluation is early June. I want to say maybe the 2nd. I have to look at our calendar.
Yes, that's the last that I
June 2nd for your final. Yeah. So, so that's the date I had.
I mean, and we can actually say we actually put it on a goal and we actually did it, so there we go. We're on a roll. Number 2 would be monitoring of strategic plan metrics done semi-annually. Discussion.
I'm writing it down. That's one of those, that's a question I had pretty early on. I think I sent to the superintendent in before my very first 2x2 agenda review is one, because we have a strategic planning committee. And if you look on the website, it's supposed to meet annually. And so I had a question if they'd been meeting, because I don't even know if the strategic planning committee this year has met at all this school year. To get updates, because that's part, I think that, I don't know what the original intent was, but to me, that seems like that would be part of it.
Well, I've served on the latest strategic plan, and it runs in my mind that we had some kind of an email come out about that. And we were going to meet in the spring, if I remember correctly. But to date, and I think I would have been included that even as a board member or board director now, and obviously our spring has had some changes. Right. So I do not think that we have, I think it's a good goal. I really think it's a great goal. I mean, I really did enjoy serving on the strategic planning committee. So, and there's probably no reason that we couldn't actually put together a spring meeting for the strategic planning. Is there? I mean, do it Zoom or something, or Microsoft Teams, or of course that would be. But we only usually had about 10 people. So, would that be feasible at all to actually do one in the spring?
I think that would be contingent upon the members of the committee, and I have not spoken with Dr. Harmon specifically about this. We've spoken most recently today and yesterday about quite a few other more urgent matters, I would say,
I know.
regarding COVID-19, but that's something that we can certainly bring to our next conversation. I actually scheduled to meet with her tomorrow, and so I can add that to the list. But I think for our purposes, I wonder if, so we're looking at two aspects of our goals here. One, it is just from my listening,
Right.
is first of all, is the goal adequate, appropriate to remain as a goal? That's one aspect that I'm hearing. And then I'm also hearing, have we met it? And so
Yes.
I don't know if tonight is that night for us to review whether or not we
Agree.
met it.
Agree.
But
Totally.
it is good for us. I think the first step is to make sure that we can agree to the extent that we can today with 3 of our board members, that these are the goals that make sense for this iteration of our board. Does that make sense, or is that something that would be helpful for us tonight?
Speaking personally, I just think it would be a good goal to just every year have on there if we update our strategic planning. And whether we've had some upsets in the apple cart here with the things, I don't see any reason why we can't keep it there. And I mean, obviously, the former board and 2 other directors that aren't here tonight,
Right.
They thought it was a good idea. So I don't see. Does anybody, Director Bowen or Director Bettinger, do you have an issue with keeping number 2?
I don't know if we can meet it this year, but with 2 months left, so it might be a goal. I would maybe send that goal to next year.
So you're saying not put it on the slate at all, even though we can't meet it?
Well, we could put it on there. I mean, there's years you don't meet all your goals. It's Yeah,
well, I mean, maybe I'm incorrect, but I didn't know that we had to have the target of meeting all of them tonight.
No, we don't have a target of all, but I'm just saying by the end of June, I'm not sure we're going to meet this goal. But it could be a stretch goal for us because, just to, monitor the strategic plan metrics. We could do it once and meet half the goal. So I'm good with it.
Director Bowen, do you have any thoughts?
I think it would be good for us to at least try. Like Michelle was saying, meet half the goal. I mean, because, as Dr. Watts was saying, we can't change the past. We could just go forward. So, I mean, we might as well at least have it on there as something to strive towards.
Okay.
To get done before the end. And if not, then we'll try again next school year.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like we have a consensus. Let's move on to number 3 under that, and that is progress monitoring of the board goals semi-annually. Did they do any of this? Well, they couldn't because they didn't formally adopt them in 2019, right?
Right.
So we could again, we could at the end of the year, we could monitor this and meet half that goal. Any discussion on goal number 3 under goal number 3 under goal number 1?
No.
Leah?
No.
Okay. All right. We'll keep number 3. I hear that as a consensus. Okay. Moving on to goal number 2, and that's labeled communication plan. And under goal number 2, the first one, number 1, is define impact of our communication plan. Discussion. Don't everybody speak at once.
Those are a bunch of words that I don't quite understand what the intent is behind them. Define impact of our communication plan. So does defining the impact mean they want, I don't even understand what that means. Is it they wanted to set, or did they want to define parameters? I don't even understand. I don't understand those words together. They don't seem reasonable or logical to me. So I define impact of our communication plan. Those words all sound very important, but very hollow to me.
Miss Laramie, did you by any chance, were you involved in any of these conversations on that part of the goal at all? That you could shed some light on that?
President Hamada, yes. After the board chose this goal as a priority, they did engage me to support in this area. And in 2018-19, I did write a draft communications plan for the entire year that they accepted, and we implemented and collaborated on together. And it was evaluated, and I provided monthly and or quarterly data that defined from a data perspective the impact, but also helped the board make decisions on where they would prioritize their communications and expend their efforts around using their times to engage with our community. And so I believe that was perhaps the intent around that statement around defining the impact of the communications plan, if that was what was intended to be captured there. I didn't actually write that goal, but did have a role in supporting the board in with the communications plan.
I remember that. You guys, that was, they worked really hard. I remember seeing the meeting where you discussed that, and I remember seeing all those milestones. So,
yes, the board devoted a lot of time, everything from videos, who was watching, just how we spent money, to the investment and thought exchange was the board's decision to, we talked a lot about equity and engaging communities of color and making sure that we're representing all stakeholders. And we did an exercise with beads. And so we had a lot of really great conversations around communication and what that means for us in Kent.
Ms. Laramie, is there a place where I can go and actually see this written communication plan that I'm not aware of?
Absolutely. It may be down because it's out of date, but I am more than happy to share that, and we can post it on BoardDocs because it was up for the public, and I'm happy to repost that because it was available for the public, and part of that included the board newsletter, which I shared in December when you came on, which was an example of just one part of the communication plan, which was reinstituted in 1819, the board e-newsletter, which had gone away for a little bit of time.
And I do think I remember reading all that. Director Bowen, do you have any thing you want to ask or add to the discussion on that?
Everything that Ms. Laramie was talking about, I felt excited because I'm like, I want to do all that stuff. I think all of that sounds to be very worthwhile with the people that are on the board now. And I think we could really benefit from having that as a goal, definitely. And I'm really hoping that's something that we can keep moving forward with.
yeah, that was the goals from 18-19, not from this school year. So that was the years prior goal. So what Ms. Laramie was talking about, because they haven't,
I'm confused, Director Benninger. What do you mean? I don't understand.
What Ms. Laramie is talking about is the goals that they had for the 18-19 school year that they implemented. It's not, what she was talking about is not the goals, or not what they've been doing for the 19-20 school year. It's the prior school year they did all that.
Yes, so 18-19 is when the communications plan was implemented and carried out. And for 19-20, we modified it knowing that there was a change in board coming. And so some of it was carried over, but not to the full extent. Also based on some of the data of the impact that we saw from how it was going in 18-19. Some decisions were changed and made at the end of the school year in 18-19. we had a large discussion at the end of the 18-19 school year about what worked and what didn't, and how people were engaging with the board. What should, the conversation of what should stop, what should start, and what should continue.
And Ms. Laramie, would under that supposed formal communication plan that was 2018, do you have like what I would call a addendum to that for 2019, 2020? Do I hear you saying that?
No, they did not. Formal 1920 plan was not made. There were ideas and suggestions, but knowing that there was a change in board coming, we knew some things were continuing, but that we knew with a change in board that there would be change in ideas and opportunity for innovation as well.
Were any of those things done in 2019 from 2018?
Yes. So
Okay.
we carried forward, like your newsletter has carried forward, some of the changes with the board structuring on the pages, the web pages. Thought exchange has stayed as a tool. We haven't used it as much with the board, but there have been some things that have stayed. And again, I'm happy to share the full document so that you can see what was started and what has changed. The way that we do, well, prior to Zoom, prior to COVID, the way that we're doing the cost neutral version to keep live streaming going was a result of those decisions.
Right.
To save the district money, but also engage our stakeholders and give them the opportunity to view live streams of regular board meetings and work sessions.
So just for clarification,
Sure.
I could see this, I mean, look at it again, because I probably heard it, and just went in one ear and remembered a little and out the other, to be honest.
Okay.
And the things that carried over 2019, do you have it written down or you just went ahead and carried it over?
I've been supporting a number of things to, at minimum, keep things going and then continue to offer this current board support and the best I can. For example, like the newsletters that I offered, the same structured every other month and those types of things. We have not done, for example, a community conversation, although this type of environment would not allow us to in the same way. But the levy was always part of the support that was going to be needed for this year. That was part of the plan, and the board was part of that, for example.
So, I mean, perhaps I personally think this is a good number one under goals communication plan, but perhaps, and we're not here to do that tonight, we're there to just go over what we think want to keep the goals or stuff, but perhaps we need to really work to define our communication plans going forward in 2020 more clearly. Would you say that's a fair assessment, Ms. Laramie?
Yes, I think communication is an extremely important part of leadership, and it's always something we can improve in any organization and any group and team. I think that this new board has taken one step that we could check the box, if you will, in the training of OPMA that we did together. I always think that's a great first step opportunity that we did with Mr. Leonard, because that's always a great reminder to go through that and make sure that everyone has the same information, particularly for a board group, to be on the same page. And that was something that the previous board prioritized as well. And that could be something under a communication plan and goal. So that could be something, for example, that would be included in this board's plan as well. And that should be done on a semi-annual basis or semi-regular basis, excuse me. So absolutely. And again, I'm happy to share that, and that can be revised and updated. And in my opinion, professional opinion, it should be a living document that is continuously updated and adapted to the needs of the community.
Totally agree. So on number one, Director Bettinger, do you have a problem as it's written define impact of our communication plan. Is that making more sense?
No,
to you?
it makes no more sense. I could understand it if it said, assess the impact of our communication plan and act accordingly or something. But it really, it's without knowing from the former board directors what they meant by define the impact, it doesn't seem logical to me. It just seems like a bunch of pretty words. And communication, if anything, should be clear and concise. And so I'm not a fan of the way that's worded. I do agree we need a communication plan. I think that's something that I've felt has been lacking, and I'm actually kind of sad that we haven't had more community involvement even during this COVID-19. I know there's been a lot of discussion over the senior graduation, and and we don't have a plan, and we don't have a forum for citizens to. We haven't implemented a forum for citizens to speak up on what's important to them. And honestly, our students and our teachers and our principals are the key stakeholders, and the parents, they're getting the biggest impact from this. And we haven't even had an opportunity to reach out and hear from them before implementing anything. So this goal, having a communication plan is very important to me, but this key performance indicator just doesn't make logical sense to me.
So would it be fair to say that you like the idea, but we need to define number one in a different mannerism?
I think I just feel like I need to hear from, Vice President Daniels and President Vengadasam on what the intent was behind number one, so I could understand it better, and then maybe we could make it more clear.
I've got that written down.
So President Hamada, may I offer this, and Director Bettinger, Director Bowen, the process that I recall, and I appreciate the discussion today because it's providing everyone an opportunity to gain clarity and to provide context based on your experiences. One thing's for sure, you can never know exactly what the previous board was thinking or what context was provided if you weren't on the board. So this does present some challenges, and I recognize that. The other reality is that this is a conversation I did have with our board, because goal setting is not necessarily intuitive. Much like an evaluation, goal setting, typically it supports what is called a SMART goal. That's really what we've talked about. So it's specific to Director Bettinger's question or comment. The specificity of that is vague, and so the language does matter. So it must be specific. The goal should be measurable. It should be attainable. And that speaks to where we are right now. Is it realistic for us to set goals with, less than 2 months in our school year? That may not be reasonable. The R in SMART stands for relevant. Does it make sense that we have this? And I think that's part of our conversation today. Does it make sense to have a communication goal for the board? That was a conversation that the board previously said, yes, in fact, not just a communication goal, but one that supports one of our strategic goals of two-way meaningful. And that was part of the conversation, that one-way communication, we've mastered that art, particularly in K-12 education in any industry. We always seem to be pushing information out and not necessarily taking time to listen. And that was a priority. That's why the community conversations were made to be a part of our communication plan, so that, yes, we have an opportunity for the board to share their thoughts and provide insights to the community, but also to provide an opportunity for the community to share their thoughts with you as a board collective, but also, and most importantly, as individual board members. So we had sessions, in schools, other locations. Some were more attended than others, but if it's one person, at least that one person was heard. And so I would offer that as so specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and the T is time bound. That is that we have a specific time within which we are measuring the extent that we said we did what we said we were going to do.
Right. Yep. I coached leaders for 12 years in SMART goals. So it's goal setting and evaluation is very important to me, and the process is very important. That's why I have a problem with the words in this strung together the way they are. But I do think that when we're looking at these now, and we're looking at the situation at hand, I would like to hear what the other goals are under the communication plan. And like I said, forgive me, I meant to print it out and I didn't, because I think we still have an opportunity in the last 2 months of this year to have some community conversations in a virtual platform, or perhaps maybe a Facebook Live where questions are coming in on the screen or something such as that. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to have some communication. You know, I heard that there was a thought exchange for the seniors. I haven't seen the results of that. So obviously, you know, there has been some communication going on. So like I said, I think communication and two-way communication is even more important. You know, there's speaking and there's listening, but then it's like, what do you do with what you hear? How does it impact the decisions that the district is being made? So that's the top level when you talk about, you know, two-way communication. You know, it's give and take, and then it's like, how do the leaders in this district make decisions based on the give and take of that two-way communication? Does it impact the way we do things? And I'll be honest, I haven't seen that in this district in a long time. I see communication and people talk at each other, but I don't see it necessarily positively impacting. And I think, you know, the emails I've been seeing in our board emails and stuff are proof that we're not listening to our community right now during this COVID response, and allowing that to impact some of the decisions going on. So this communication plan is probably the most important piece of the goals to me. So could you tell me what number 2 is?
Director Bowen, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I find it interesting.
Sorry. You're right there, down at the bottom.
Green goes on. It just excites me when I see the green come on. I can go ahead and continue reading on. I'm kind of at a loss what we're going to do with this overall, but I will continue on and read them all, and then maybe we can come to some kind of a agreement on how we go forward. Number 2 under communication plan says, have specific metrics for communication plan. In parentheses, training and implementation for thought exchange. That's number 2. Did everybody understand that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm moving on then to number 3. It says community conversations should continue in multiple formats, town halls, going into the classrooms. That's what's listed under number 3. Any questions on that? Moving on to number 4 is transition plan for incoming board members. So that concludes all the items under goal 2, communication plan. Discussion. Director Bowen, do you have anything you want to say first off? Let me see that green.
Sorry, I do not.
I mean, is it clear to you, Director Bowen, the communication plan, the ones under it, do you think it fits with it? I want to hear a little bit about your thoughts, if you don't mind.
I'm trying to catch up on what you guys were talking about. I had a kerfuffle
Okay.
for like the last 2 or 3 minutes.
All right.
I apologize.
Not a problem. So on communications, do you, just in general, do you think a communication plan should be under a goal too on this overall thing? I mean, how do you rate that in context with our annual board goal?
Well, for this year, I think,
I was asking Director Bowen directly, sorry.
so,
I just want to make sure she's heard tonight.
yeah,
I still think that it's important. I mean, I know we have a month and a half or a month left, but I mean, there's still opportunities out there to have communications with the students and parents. And are you like asking me to rate it on an importance?
No,
Is that
I
what
just
you mean? Or
I correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. I'd never want to do that. But it sounds like at least the three of us and the two former board members and current board members thought it was important to have goal to a communication plan. I mean, I think I hear consensus on that goal. Do I not?
yes.
yeah, definitely. It's very important.
And so perhaps the numbers under it, we may need to tweak a little bit. Do I hear that also?
Mm-hmm.
Especially, yeah, with what's going on and how we have to get things done now.
Mm-hmm. And I cut you off, Director Bettinger, and I apologize. Did you have something you wanted to say further?
No, I think it's all very important. The only one I think is attainable still for the remainder of this year would be to have some of those community conversations in different forums to engage our community, especially since we, again, still don't know. I think Superintendent Rakedahl is speaking tomorrow, 2 days. Friday, yeah, on the 22nd. So there might be new information then, but you know, I've been reading up on what's been happening around the world, just opening schools and just different across the nation, how they're making plans. But again, our key stakeholders are the people that are actually in the classrooms and the parents that are sending those kids to the classrooms and teachers and principals, everybody that's in the schools. So I think we could still have some robust community conversation in, like I said, in different forums. So I think that one is still attainable on this. Time has passed. So creating metrics, I think, is unreasonable right now for the last 2 months of the year. Training implementation for thought exchange, that's not going to happen, I don't think. Transition plan for incoming board members, that boat has sailed. But I do think it's really important to hear what our community has to say. We were elected to represent the community, and we haven't really given them an opportunity to participate fully in the things that are coming up, not just COVID-19, budgets coming up too, things like that. I haven't seen the thought exchange from the budget either. So it's important to me to hear what the community wants so we can, as leaders, use that to inform decisions.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Director Bettinger and President Hamada. I know that we've said and heard a lot that has been said tonight, and I know we have some time to reflect on this. Going back to 1819, there was a different set of goals that seemed to be aligned to what I've heard from most of you this evening. As we think about our next steps, and certainly know that we are communicating with our families, our students, our staff. I will be providing you with additional updates that will shed some light on what communications and what conversations we are having. As I've shared with you, it's difficult necessarily to kind of bring everyone along at the same time. Things are moving so quickly, but I will share with you, you'll be, I think, pleasantly surprised, and I trust you'll have questions, and we appreciate that, about our next steps. We've included staff, students, principals of our high schools and academies on graduation decisions. And I've made it clear that safety, just as Superintendent Rakdal has said, safety is our number one concern. At the same time, as we go forward, we're moving at an understandable pace, enough for us to gain information, to make recommendations, not so fast that we have to backtrack if and when, as we know, information comes out, and oftentimes we hear different conditions as they change. So that information will be shared with you, as it has been with our principals and community specifically regarding graduation. I know that's a hot topic. I know that it is something that is important, but there's other topics as well that may not be as glamorous, but they certainly are important, and we are working hard and smart. But we can always do better. We know that. I know that communication, and that's part of the reason why we have these specific goals for the board and for Kent School District.
I'm just kind of at a quandary here. I mean, it sounds like we want to keep goal 2, communication plan. I mean, how will we adjust those 4 underlying items? I mean, do we need to have them, or do we need to find them, or do we need to talk about that more? Or, I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think this would be something, that if we're going to vote on this, we should have it on the agenda for the next board meeting in some format. But again, the only one on here, and I would like to hear from Director Bowen too, but I think the only one we could even achieve would be the community conversations.
I can agree with that.
Sorry, Director Bowen. President Hamada, Director Bettinger, Director Bowen, just for your information, I have reactivated the page that was deactivated from 18-19 school year that holds the communications plan I was speaking of on our website for transparency. It's complete intact. It has not changed, so you can read it in full as it was implemented. And it's under the Board of Directors page there.
You should have access to that now. Yeah.
Thank you. That was great.
Welcome.
Thank you. That was fast.
well, I mean, I do see, speaking there, we do have a Facebook site. I have been getting all kinds of communication on my phone. I have been getting emails. I have been getting phone calls. I was on 3 of the senior virtual meetings. All of those are communications. So, and definitely there's been updates with the exclamation mark on every time I go into the Kent School District website, it's wanting to give me information, and I'm to say, okay, I got it. Those are all forms of communication. So when you say, all of those to me are more than one point of communication. So to be fair on that, I mean, whether it's meeting what our community says they need or want or whatever, and there's always going to be, like you say, more. I mean, under that, if we're going to bring this to a board agenda, to me, we have to have a product that's ready to vote on, not be voting on it that night. Am I incorrect in that interpretation?
No, but I think, remembering the plan from 18-19, and I'm definitely going to look at that, and I appreciate that it's been loaded. But if you think about it, the 18-19 plan was all things that the board did as a whole. Essentially, they had those community conversations, they had the newsletters, things like that, and most of the communication. And I'll be honest, I haven't known what's been going on. I, get the communications that the parents get sometimes 15 minutes, 30 minutes before. I have no long range vision of things that are in the works or going on. so having that, just being able to communicate with our families and offer them a forum, a lot of people, we're not having live board meetings anymore. And so they have to go through a form. Understandably, they have to go through a form process, and they submit a form. And not many people are doing that. We used to have people that would come to the board meetings, at least, a couple, 3 people, every board meeting would come. And that was a way for the board to listen and create an opportunity. And we don't have that in as robust a format right now, which is understandable, but we've, haven't had any community conversations with the whole community. I'm even getting questions from people that don't even have students that are seniors that are upset about, graduation for their friends and for their friends' kids and things like that, that have been asking me questions.
To not belabor this, Director Bettinger, how would you word that in a metric underneath communication? If you have a defined idea in your mind, how would you put that down that we could, from now until the end of the school year, how would you word that so you felt that in the future we could be working more toward that? If you have a vision of that, I'd like to have you work on a couple of metrics that you think would be workable, and we could bring that back.
Right.
I'm kind of on task here tonight.
Right. Yeah, top of mind would be just having some Facebook Live conversations, even if it was just like the community conversations with just 2 board directors, and because people can just type in comments. Of course, then, not everyone has internet or access or Facebook, so that there's barriers there. So it's just, I have to think. That's one idea, but again, it concerns me because there are the electronic methods. There aren't as many opportunities for everyone to participate if they don't have internet or they don't have a computer or they don't have Facebook. A newsletter, but again, that's electronic communication. Analog communication in some way, if we could get a printed newsletter, again, that would be something that I wouldn't feel comfortable unless all my colleagues had an opportunity to discuss and decide. But I think there are other means, analog and digital, that we could communicate with.
Could you possibly think that through and come up with a couple of numbers under that we could actually implement, that would not be a overburden to our staff at this point, or that would be, but we could actually implement and show that we had, in good faith with all that has gone on, made some correction to that, and then we could bring in our other 2 directors and see what they think of that revision of that. If you would take that on, or if you want to be a part of that too, Miss Director Bowen, I would be open to that too. I'll think about it. And if I can come up with a couple of sentences that I think would be applicable, maybe we could kind of work on that in our next session. Does that sound feasible, or am I kicking that down the road too much?
It's definitely doable.
Okay, do I hear us all agree if we have something, and maybe I could open that up informational only to the other 2 directors that were unable to be here tonight, to add if they think something like that would work out? Does that sound like a plan to go on that second floor?
To be clear, just coming up with ideas of ways we could allow for some effective 2-way communication and interact with citizens to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, I'd really, at this point, with all that we had going on, I'd like to use the KISS method, keep it simple, and that we can achieve. I mean, that's just my philosophy. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're on to number 3, which is policy review. That's under goal 3. And the first one number under that, I have specific metrics for policy review. And in parentheses is reviewing a number of policies a month. And we've been working on that, right?
Mhm.
And I've been pushing that. And actually, Vice President Daniel and I were on for an hour on today talking about that.
Yep. I talked yesterday with Director Vengadaslam.
And are you at some point you're working on one right now, or you're working on a plan to work on them? I'm just curious because I wanted to bring that up tonight. That's all I wanted to.
Isn't that our next agenda item tonight?
I just actually took that off because it was confusing to
Oh.
people. But I mean, I think we can throw that in now. Director Daniels and I have a plan going forth that we're going to work on that. We do not want to leave Director Bowen out, but that inadvertently happened. But you can chime in there and work with somehow we could fit Director Bowen in there too. But do you want to share if you guys have a plan going forward when you're going to meet, or?
We do have a plan. We're working on the 4312 because it's come up several times. And we actually have a big hairy goal to just get it, maybe a first draft ready by this weekend. And
Okay.
I had asked for it to be placed on the agenda, but I don't see that it got on the agenda. But that was a big hairy goal. And then looking at the goals that came up from the Clark Nuber, because we have the 4,000 and 6,000 series. So the goals that came up are the policies that came up under the Clark Nuber, to look at those, and then to go back to the essential policies in the 4,000 and the essential policies in the 6,000. But really that 4312, it's 25 years old. And it's caused a lot of havoc. So that was our discussion on yesterday.
Well, and
that was yesterday.
And specifically, I'm really glad to hear that. That could, I hope, make a lot of things more clear and perhaps clarify to some people that really feel that needs to be done, and make our life a lot smoother going forward, I hope. And as I said, Vice President Daniel and I met for an hour. We had a great conversation. I don't know how much progress we made, but we had a great conversation. We have a plan going forward to probably meet in the afternoon on Saturday. So I'm encouraged by that. I really am. And Director Bowen, I'm not sure how we're going to fit you into this, but if you're comfortable with me kind of talking to you about that at another time, I do not want you to feel left out on some of this policy work.
Thank you very much. And yeah, that would be totally fine.
Okay, believe me, speak up if I'm overstepping here or something. If you have a better idea, let me know.
I don't have a better idea.
Okay.
I do have a question, President Hamada, and for this discussion, it is, again, I think it's helpful for us to have discussions and provide context. But I think you touched upon something that I have a question about. What happens when our two board members who are not able to be here rejoin this conversation? I want us to be thinking about, is this a discussion where we need to go back to the beginning to have consensus-based discussions, or is there a process that you have in mind or discussed perhaps with them already about how they can be a part of this conversation at some point before final decisions are made?
That's a good point, Dr. Watts. Thanks for bringing that up, because in my mind, and this is just in Leslie Hamada's mind, which
Absolutely.
is not always the brightest. I need a lot of help on that. But I mean, it's not always the best plan, but it's, in my mind, if they had agreed on all of these prior, it seemed to me that they kind of felt that was okay, and any adjustments we made to it, I thought would be the point for us to discuss and include them. Do you see that way, or do you think we should start all over again when we have the adjustments?
Oh, I'm not making an assessment either way. I just wanted to make sure we had a plan, and I think that's important for, regardless of who's able to be here or not, that there's some inclusivity involved, and that we reach a consensus. Because it could be that even though there were goals that were made in the past by a different iteration of the board, context does change, and perhaps those individuals who run may have a different way of thinking. I don't know that. So it's just an opportunity for all of us to be on the same page. And I assume you had that plan, but I didn't want to make that assumption complete. I just wanted to ask that question.
Well, I'm open to more input. If anybody else, I was thinking of bringing this up again with corrections, but Director Venture, do you?
That's what I thought. I think my brain went the same place yours did, is that if they had discussion about this, and I don't know how many discussions they had about it, but if they had enough discussion to come up with tentative goals and then decide to wait for the new board, I guess I thought that they were at least close to being voted on. So I don't think, other than, adding some different methods for that item number 3 under the communications plan, I don't think we're adding anything. I think we're just maybe removing things more than anything. So, we don't have any specific metrics for policy review, but we certainly have a plan. So, so what's the other items under policy review? Maybe I could speak more clearly after I hear them.
There's only one other, and that is add WASDA timeline to board calendar.
Okay.
And according to my board calendar, that already been done, right?
Yeah, the board calendar was never voted on either. That's still tentative. I don't see that was voted on either. And did they have 3 or 4 goals?
4.
What was the 4th goal?
Any further question, Director Bowen, that you had before we move on to 4?
Nope.
Okay. Any clarification from anybody else on number 3 before we move on? Or? Okay. Goal 4 is annual calendar, and the only item under that is really a bullet point that says the annual calendar must be completed before addressing the above. And then there was a question, where are we, and I have a draft copy that was in my packet on the annual calendar.
I have that.
And when I looked at that, it did say draft. So, we never adopted it formally. And I sound like an idiot not knowing that, but I guess I didn't.
Mm-mm.
This is Karen. Do you mind if I say something?
Of course not, Miss Holly. Go ahead.
The annual calendar that is referenced always refers to the board annual agenda plan. And that has not been something that has been voted on by the board. Rather, it has been based on a combination of presentations that need to be made. A combination of possible things the board would like to see presented. So basically, it is the presentations for work sessions and regular meetings. And it's a pretty fluid document because as events change and circumstances change and other items become more of a priority, that document changes. So,
okay. So that one doesn't get voted on. So,
No.
Okay. So
I'm just kind of, I need some clarification here. So if it says the annual calendar must be completed, so do I hear people saying, even though it said draft on it, it really was kind of adopted as a calendar and is fluid? Or
I think adopted is a really strong word. It is more of, it is a fluid plan that the board is aware of because it is updated as presentations change. It's updated in the board of directors SharePoint. So, and when I sent the board the items you asked for earlier this week, I included that link to the SharePoint for the annual agenda plan. So the board can go there at any time. It has not been updated lately because of the current situation.
So could it be possible that with this goal, they were talking about a different calendar? Because like Ms. Laramie said, there was the communication plan, which obviously involved calendaring, community conversations, things like that. And you know, to achieve goals, you also have to schedule time for those goals. So could it be possible that they were talking about a different calendar that wasn't about the just meeting agendas, but it was about getting the work done?
Well, I have to say, anytime they talk about the annual calendar, they were referencing the board agenda plan.
Okay.
Now, and as far as the driving force behind getting certain things done, whether it was the board annual self-evaluation, that was typically driven by the president. So it wasn't something that we put on a calendar or on a schedule. It seemed to be something that the president kept track of herself.
Okay.
So it wasn't something that was on a calendar, but the board would call the annual agenda plan the calendar.
Okay.
Okay, so now I'm really lost. I'm sorry. But when they're saying the annual calendar must be completed before addressing the above, what do they mean then? If it's fluid and it's done and it's not adopted, but whatever you want to, it's in action being used.
Well, I'm only guessing here because I don't know what they were thinking. But when you're talking about under goal 3, under policy review, having a goal being reviewing X number of policies per month, that would be something they would have had me add to the board annual agenda plan. We're going to be reviewing policies XYZ on this date, and I'd update the plan.
Okay.
So I think more than anything, I think as part of the planning on when this would happen, they wanted to see what the board agenda plan looked like once it was fully fleshed out, so to speak.
Okay.
For the year.
Makes sense.
Okay. So what do we do with goal 4, annual calendar? I mean, is that okay the way it is then?
It's
Don't
It's up to
everybody
you.
speak at
Yeah.
once?
I don't know. I have no feeling. I have no feeling either way. You know, obviously, again, there's 2 months. If I was going to do anything with this annual calendar, I'd get it on there to get our goals for the 2021 school year on the calendar. So as far as an annual calendar, I'd get the budget sessions on there, and I would get the yeah, I would get the
Well, I mean,
sessions up there to set the goals for the next year. So we can keep that goal. It's just there's things, you know, between now and the next school year that need to be done, and they're not on the calendar. So
well, I mean, Ms. Colley referenced that it's a fluid document.
right.
And
But the budget stuff, we had our meeting in February, early February, about the budget stuff, and it never got on the calendar. So,
right.
I mean, so yes, I say we keep the goal and we keep adding things to the calendar because we have a lot of work to do and a lot of things that to do that haven't been done for a long time. So
Right, but I mean, as far as this conversation we're having, it sounds like we should keep that as a goal. Just put it in your calendar. I mean, how we implement that and stuff.
Yeah.
I probably need to be more of a driving force on that than I have been. And so it's on my to-do list. So, Director Bowen, did you have any comments on that?
I think it's good to keep it on. I think it's good to know that it's not something that we need to vote on, and that it's something that's ever changing, and that it can be modified.
Correction, Director Bowen, we have to vote on these annual board goal agendas. So overall, we would have to ultimately vote on it, all those.
No, I'm talking about the calendar.
Okay, if you're just talking specifically to specific items on the calendar, okay.
Yeah, just calendar.
As long as we're on the same page, okay.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
But it would be interesting to know what else needed to be worked on, or what else could be worked on between now and the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I know Dr. Bender was saying that there was a lot of other things to be worked on. So it would be, I think, beneficial for us to have a list of those things to see what can get done.
Yes. My first goal here is to somewhat get an acceptance on the annual goals, and I think then underneath them we could do whatever we can to pull it together to get as much done as we can before the end of the year. And also, Director Bettinger, planning into July, August, into the next year. So we're not facing this all of a sudden. That, you know, to me, it's kind of a revolving plan.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be ahead of it a little bit. And I realize we've had so much that
Right.
it's difficult, but I prefer to, even though if we have to tweak it, I'd prefer to be a little ahead of the game instead of behind the game. So
if you set goals, we have to also put on the calendar the evaluation of those goals. So when we set our board goals, we have to have an evaluation, and to follow policy, then that would be the superintendent would submit a written report to the board that reflects the degree to which the goals and objectives have been accomplished. So in order for us to fulfill the requirements of that policy, you know, we need to vote on these goals. So, you know, the next board meeting would be the earliest opportunity. Then we need to work on these goals. So that needs to be put on the calendar. Then we need to evaluate those goals. And the best practice when you're doing goals is that in the evaluation process, you also set tentative goals for the next period of time that you're evaluating. So we can accomplish all of these things, I think, and it's just going to take, you know, work sessions and things like that.
So I'm laser focused on coming out of this with something concrete. I'm sorry. The only issue that I see with this where we might need a little more defining is on goal 2. I hear about inclusion, but I would really like to get these things voted upon. And I'm not sure, I mean, at the next we have a board meeting next week. We have a work session. Is that already filled with things to do?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'd like to have this voted on the next board meeting. I don't know how we accomplish that without more inclusion.
Maybe a conversation with obviously board members who are present and with Director Venkatasalam, and you said you've already spoken with Vice President Daniels. Maybe that would help to bring some consensus on how soon we could
how would I accomplish that? Oh, I mean, without having another formal altogether, we would have to have all the board.
Well,
involved,
I'm speaking
right?
of gathering input, not necessarily. You could gather input from each board member, having a conversation with them, just assess what their thoughts were and make a recommendation based on what everyone's preference is.
So
Yeah,
if I put together a synopsis of what we did tonight and the areas that we're still not clear about and the areas that we might want more inclusion on and sent that out email form, is that having a formal board meeting without having a formal board meeting to get input back? I mean,
It could be considered,
mhm.
yes.
I mean, I'm just concerned about violating OPMA.
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm
and
asking.
honestly, like I said, we've all had to miss board meetings at various times. They were involved in the first round. We're not adding anything that I see. We're only maybe taking some things away or asking questions. So maybe call it a first reading and approval. And we may decide to send it out for a second reading, or we may say, have that conversation in an open public board meeting, and we may just say, it's great. This is our first time talking about it, Director Bowen and you, President Hamada, and myself. And I appreciate the expertise of Ms. Laramie and Ms. Howley and Superintendent Watts, certainly. And I don't know how many conversations they had as a board prior. But if we're not, I don't feel like we're making any drastic changes. We're just seeking some clarity. So to put this on the agenda and again, have it be a first reading and we might agree on it, or we might make some tweaks in public at an open public meeting, and then would be my suggestion.
Well, I mean, to me, we're now in the May 27th before the first time we could vote on it. I mean, putting this off into June just seems like, why did we even bother to do it at all?
Well, we're supposed to follow our policies.
No, I know, and that's why I'm trying to get us following this policy that unfortunately didn't get us on track to do this earlier, So I'm wondering if we can't, and I agree, I mean, their question was why they didn't go ahead and implement it like they're really supposed to do, is because they wanted to be inclusive of us. We've now been included.
Right.
So I honestly don't see why we can't bring this forth in an open public meeting and vote on it.
I have a suggestion.
Yes, Ms. Howard.
Certainly, you can type up your notes, adding it to the current document that you have. If I didn't send it to you in a Word doc, I can. And you could type in the additional notes and possibly even strike out what needs to be removed based on tonight's discussion. And it can certainly go on the May 27th agenda under discussion and approval.
Okay.
So you would discuss it, and if some tweaks are made from the dais, so to speak, you can still approve it based on these amendments.
Okay.
You can still vote on it.
Great.
To me, that sounds like a good plan. Any discussion on that? I mean, I'm happy because we're actually making headway. Anybody have Director Bowen, Director Bettinger, anybody?
I'm happy with it. Doesn't leave anybody out.
Okay. Okay. Does that sound like, Dr. Watts, does that sound like I'm hearing what everybody is saying tonight?
Does.
Okay, because I need to be hearing from everybody, okay? I realize that. We don't want to be we not only want to be equitable to our students in our mission statement, we want to be equitable in our board too, okay? And that's important to me too. Okay, so I feel really good tonight. We're now at 8:20, and it looks like we have a plan going forward with our annual goals and getting them on a board meeting and getting them accepted. So that pretty much covers everything I wanted to cover on that. Just as long as I've got your ear here, Dr. Watts, my phone is ringing off the hook about this graduation situation. Not only my school phone, but my personal phone, because most people have it. And I mean, I realize graduation is important. I realize all this other stuff is important too, but I sure hope for our community's sake, it seems to be some kind of a boost that they really need and some kind of a plan here. So
Yeah, I can just share with you, while it's not a specific agenda item, we do have a plan going forward. Melissa and I have been speaking early and often, and it's been moved forward, as I mentioned earlier, with continued support from our local school leaders, principals, thought exchange, obviously. But Melissa, and I'll give you an opportunity to share more.
Yeah. I would say that I would support Dr. Watson following up after this meeting, because we want to adhere to OPMA
Absolutely.
and not discuss anything that's not already on the special meeting agenda.
Correct.
So addressing anything that outside of the 2 agenda items would be a violation, and I don't want to jeopardize us. So I'm sure we can follow up with some details and address that, President Hamada.
okay, as I read the policy on special meetings, if you don't vote on it or something, you can bring up other agenda items. Am I incorrect in that interpretation?
Well, in recalling what Mr. Leonard advised the board in a previous meeting to not change what has been already posted, I'm just going by what our legal advice has been from Mr. Leonard. So I would
Okay,
just,
And within 24 hours or less, just know that you will have as comprehensive of an update as we can provide, given the most recent conversation. So just know that is forthcoming. And I can certainly, we can jump on a phone or email or Teams chat and talk about that.
okay. I really appreciate that. And
Absolutely.
I'm really trying hard to follow all these rules, and I've read these policies over and over again, but sometimes
I understand. We all are.
I appreciate it. We're
Absolutely.
trying to be supportive, and
Yes,
we will get you information. We just want to be supportive also.
absolutely.
Okay, and that's basically all I had tonight. We're now at 8:23. Director Bowen, Director Bettinger, anybody else have anything else before we can actually sign off a little early here, and we can go perhaps enjoy our evening a little more? Okay, I'm
Oh,
not
I
hearing
realize you can't see me. No, I'm sorry. I'm shaking my head no, and you can't see me. Sorry, I apologize.
I'm really glad to hear your voice tonight, Director Bowen. We really appreciate your voice on everything. So just be aware of that. And I guess that concludes our meeting tonight. I do appreciate Ms. Laramie and Dr. Watts and Ms. Howley, you taking your time
Absolutely.
to do this tonight. I really greatly appreciate it. So I think we actually accomplished quite a bit tonight. So
Thank you. Glad to serve.
very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe. Have a good evening.
It's okay. It's okay. Mommy's going to take you out. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on.